Hello, welcome back, sissies, gays, and theys. Today I wanted to talk about something that has been in our cultural landscape for at least since the day after Thanksgiving, has been all over the internet, all over social media, is heated rivalry. I know it seems like I'm late to the party, and maybe I am, but I also think, for what I'm going to talk about and what I took away from a big theme of it, I feel like we're right on time. Welcome, I am the Stuttering Sissy. I talk about life with a stutter, pop culture, and mental health. So subscribe, follow me, share my content if you like it. And yeah, I really want to build a community here. I'm having fun with these. And so I guess where we could start off is I feel like for myself, I hadn't heard about Heated Rivalry. Um, I think I had an idea that it was a book series, but I didn't know, you know, the ins and outs of it necessarily. And I saw the trailer for the show, and I was just like, oh, like I'm curious, and I want to see what this is. And like so many of y'all, like so much of the world, I was captivated. Like obviously the the sex scenes were really intense and passionate, and that's what, of course, like drew us all in. But I think for me, what I've been thinking about is like the yearning aspect of it. And you know, this centers on two closeted hockey players, which, that's not my experience. That's not the experience of majority of people. But I think that what it speaks to is that, for a lot of LGBT folks, we were at one time or another, or maybe even still, in the closet. So we know what it feels like to be in the shadows, to feel like we have to sneak around. And I think what I took away from it in terms of the yearning is that there is such a big appetite for stories like this. I think specifically within gay films, since I can remember, right, like a lot of our stories end in death or tragedy. I remember growing up, like, particularly watching films around, like, folks would die of AIDS, or, some great big tragedy would befall one of the characters. And, you know, we would watch it, we would take it in because that's a representation that we had at the time. And, I think this feels so refreshing because there is light at the end of the tunnel, right? Like, we know that these two will end up together. We see that there's care there, we see that there's love there, and it's not going to end in a tragic way. And it's so interesting because I remember the first time I watched this, I was on edge. Like, I don't know about y'all, but in my head, I was like, something's about to happen, something's about to happen. Particularly, like, after episode 3 and into episode 4, I was like, okay, like, they're gonna get caught, something's going to happen, Rose is gonna take this, like, really, really badly and out Shane, and you know, it was almost like I couldn't fully enjoy it the first time I watched because I was just so on edge. Where it wasn't until like episode 5 and 6 where I'm like, oh, like they're doing something new here, and it like calmed my nervous system down. Um, and when I rewatched it, I wasn't anxious. I knew and anticipated what was going to come, but it was just so interesting to watch, and like my body still remembers, right? My body still remembers what it means to like tense up, um, when you're trying not to be found out, to change your mannerisms, to walk differently, talk differently, uh, wear certain types of clothing, like just to like not be found out, and how exhausting that is. And I think this all comes back to what I think the core theme of the show is, which is yearning. And I think what makes me feel really good as a gay or queer person is that in the dating scene, it can get really easy. It can be really easy to feel jaded, to I feel like no one really wants to build something, to work through something. And I think a lot of it has to do with social media, where with these dating apps, we don't necessarily have to go through difficult times, because we can call someone toxic. We can say that they have like a red flag that we can't get over. And I think in our minds and in our hearts, we know that there are very real signs of when someone is toxic, and when the relationship can lead into a territory where it's not healthy for either party. And also, I think we have to be honest with ourselves, with whoever we're in relationship with, that this moment that we're in, maybe it's a disagreement, but can there be a resolution? Can there be a conversation? And I think that something that is missing in our dating conversations is like, relationships are work. And I think people forget that. I think, and I'm someone that has fallen into this territory of like, I get into a relationship with someone, I'm like, oh, this is lovely, we're enjoying each other's company, we're enjoying each other's friends, we're doing things, and then, eventually the honeymoon phase fades away, and then that's when you're faced with the real stuff. And I think it's very easy to be along for the party and for the ride, but like, are you really gonna stay when like disagreements arise? Which is the interesting thing about heated rivalry, right? Is that there are times when they misunderstand each other, and at first they're using their bodies and their physicality to understand each other better, to figure out their thoughts, and eventually they do have to have difficult conversations. It requires each of the characters to really like get out of their own way, sometimes to apologize as well. And I think that's like a really good example of not running away. And I think especially when, as two closeted characters, they don't necessarily have to stay with each other, right? Like they could have very much easily just like walked away from each other, except that underneath, that physicality, there's care, and we know that there's love. And so I think that this show does a brilliant job of, slow burns are important to a long term relationship, and yearning for something real is important, and being hopeful and taking your time and going on dates, and if the first time it doesn't work out, right, like just being consistent in your own want, and not even just a want, right? I think we all, on a biological level, like we all want to be wanted, and we all want to be chosen. And I think within culture, within the past like 10 years, has really done a number on us of like, like we are supposed to be independent on our own. We don't need anyone around us. And it's like, no, we actually do need those people. And I think as gay folks, as queer folks, we know that better than anyone. Like we make chosen family. We do have friends around us, or at least a lot of us within the community are able to make those tight friendships. And I think sometimes in relationships it can be hard for us to navigate, and that's a whole other video that I would gladly get into, but I think that the Heated Rivalry show really does provide possibility in that we can move from this culture of I don't need you to I'm curious about you, I want you, I need you, how can we make this work when things are tough? And I think that's a beautiful message. That's something I took away from the show. I wanted to talk about this. I know there's so many other themes and different dissections of characters that we could go into, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about what I got out of it personally. I would love to hear what y'all got out of it. Are y'all excited for season 2 next year? Thank y'all so much for watching. I hope you have a good one. I hope you do something that brings you joy this week, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.